Although it took them a while, but Bermas has finally brought in Mazda's Large Product Group range of cars here in Malaysia in the form of the Mazda CX-60 and next to me, the CX-80, positioned as the brand's flagship SUV, available in a sole 2.5-litre plug-in hybrid all-wheel drive variant, priced almost 300,000 ringgit. Mazda not only wants the CX-80 to serve as an upgrade for existing CX-8, CX-9 owners, but also steal some market share from premium European mix. For example, the Volvo XC90, BMW X5 and the Mercedes-Benz GLE to look its way to the CX-80. But is the CX-80 appealing and luxurious enough for those who are shopping for a European SUV to look its way? Let's find out. My name's Adrian, I'm all about the details, and you're watching cDrive. Based on Mazda's Large Product Group architecture, this rear-wheel drive biased CX-80 has one of the longest wheelbase in class, 3,120mm, which is longer than even the BMW X5. Now up front, you get a sole 2.5-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder petrol engine longitudinally mounted with a transfer case to send power between the front and rear wheels. Now, this right here, the electric motors are actually sandwiched in between the 8-speed automatic transmission. So this entire architecture is very similar to what you see in BMW, Volvo and Mercedes plug-in hybrid systems. And this layout is a big difference compared to the Chinese plug-in hybrid systems, which I'll explain in detail later. So next up is charging. The onboard charger supports up to 7.2 kilowatts of AC charging, only AC here, to charge up the 17 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack. Takes up about under 3 hours and is able to deliver up to 65 kilometers of EV driving range. Now, I highly recommend to really charge up the CX-80 all the time because this car will set off in pure EV mode, and when you're on full beans, to get up maximum performance out of it, you have to have sufficient charge in the EV battery. And once you depleted the battery, driving the CX-80 feels like fish out of water. Boot space opens up to 258 liters with the third row seats up, and surprisingly, you're able to fit in 2 suitcases very easily like this. And once you fold down the third row seats, space expands to 687 liters. There's no spare wheel here. Instead, you use a tire repair kit, and underneath the force split floor, there's extra storage spaces and a nice little compartment to stow away your tonneau cover. Unlike premium brands which indulge in excessiveness, keyless entry on the CX-80 is only available on the front 2 doors. So you have to first unlock at the front to open up the rear. The first thing that will capture your attention in the CX-80 is the use of materials all around. So there's this like suede-like material on the dashboard, the different colors, black and chocolate, the dual-tone steering wheel. It all feels very expensive and special in here. The seats, for example, it's a combination of the same materials on the dashboard and steering, leather and then suede inserts. It just looks and feels very expensive in here. Check it out. Look at how soft. But otherwise, the cabin is quite a familiar place to be in, as with other Mazda SUVs. So you get this horizontal widescreen display. Again, that's not touchscreen, it's all controlled via the Mazda's MZD Connect system over here, this swivel wheel, which sounds and feels very nice to use. However, I feel that the operation, especially when you're connected to Apple CarPlay, can be a little bit of a chore. You have to keep on swiveling between the different menus. Over to the driver's side, the digital instrument cluster, the presentation is beautiful and you're able to change between you want the text to be enlarged or by default. I think this is a very thoughtful feature, especially for older folks who prefers, a little bit larger fonts to read it easier. On the steering wheel, the left side controls all the multimedia stuff. On the right side is where you control the car's ADAS. So a push of a button, then you show the ADAS display just like that. Now, over here on the left side, the info button, this is where you cycle through the different information on the driver display. Something that I noticed is that the information shown here is very limited. So for example, it does not show the car's hybrid screen, that means whether the engine is awake, charging or not, and it does not cycle through enough information for you to play around. So for example, I want to see trip A, I want to see trip B, it's just over here, down here. So the consumption, the electric and the fuel consumption, you can't cycle between the different trips or the different information just like that. I find that it's a little bit of a wasted opportunity because it's quite a sizable real estate. Storage spaces in here, you get 2 cup holders nicely hidden, and the center armrest is actually quite shallow. The Type-C charging ports are actually located inside here, so once you've plugged in, you have to place your phone underneath the center armrest, and the side door bins don't fit a large size water bottle. The Mi Drive mode cycles between Sport, Normal, EV and Off-Road, which then changes the instrument cluster theme a little bit here and there. Now, if you want to look at the hybrid screens, it's actually in the infotainment screen. So you have to go into menu, go to information, monitor, drive efficiency monitor. This is where you can tell whether your engine, your electric motors, your battery, what's doing what. On the center console here, there's a button which you may think that it's to alter the regenerative braking settings. No, it's actually to force charge the lithium-ion battery pack with the internal combustion engine. So it will forcefully wake up and then charge out the battery to gain extra juice. And to alter the regenerative braking intensity is actually via the infotainment screen.
Over to the passenger side, the seat is comfortable and supports my back very well. The power seat comes with height adjustment and lumbar support, and I get ventilated seat too. To open up the glove box is a conventional latch. Charging the devices, there's a wireless charging tray, 2 Type-C ports in the center armrest, and 2 more at the rear. Vanity mirror has LED lights.
The middle row seat is a captain seat layout, so effectively making the CX-80 a 6-seater 2+2+2. And you can see there's a center tunnel here with a 2 cup holders, lots of storage spaces, and my favorite bit is this hidden compartment underneath here. You also get the rear air vents and your climate control panels with heated and ventilated function. Now, space. I have the front seat adjusted to my usual driving position. I'm 175 cm tall, and the seats are adjusted all the way forwards. I have just about 1 tennis ball's worth of knee room, and space in the footwell is also very comfortable. But if I slide all the way backwards, I have about 3 tennis balls worth, and Celine, who is 150, would have about 4 tennis balls worth. Footwell space, although it's not as wide as I like it to, but I'm able to slot my feet underneath the front seat for a very comfortable seating posture, and you get plenty of thigh support. And there's only recline angle is power adjusted, and you also get side sunlights. Getting into the third row seats, there's a quick release button, or you can do this, a manual latch on the top. Despite its wheelbase of 3,120mm, I feel that the third row seats packaging is still superior in the CX-8. This right here, you can see, my feet are actually a little bit raised up for the floor. And now I have the middle row seats adjusted to its most forward position, and I have about 1 tennis ball's worth of knee room. And when adjusted to all the way back, you better be nice to your middle row passengers so they don't squeeze you like that. Fortunately, the third row seat still comes with air vents, albeit it's positioned around my knee area, and a Type-C charging port on both sides. Starting off in the CX-80, with enough battery juice, it will primarily drive in pure electric mode. Despite on whatever drive modes you are in between the different drive modes, it will always stick or primarily drive in EV. And once you're going around town like this, on this absolutely terrible terrains, it's still able to iron out. That means the rebound is still quite comfortable, but you do get a bit of a shock, like the sound, the noise coming from the suspension whenever you're going all these ruts, and that rebound can be a little bit alarming, or rather should I say a bit uncharacteristic of a car that's worth 300,000 ringgit. But otherwise, in town, in traffic, this is a very serene driving experience. It's just calm, quiet, refined, easy. In fact, despite its size, it's actually quite an easy car to position around. And let's say once you want to get out, pure electric mode, it's smooth, it's slick, and whenever you want to do a quick accelerate, you notice that there's a boost on the instrument cluster, and that's where it'll give you maximum performance when you want to go on hard acceleration. And earlier on I mentioned not having a DHT, a dedicated hybrid transmission, instead an 8-speed automatic here. Despite not having a torque converter, it uses a multi-clutch system for engaging it and setting off, but it's still a conventional automatic. EV mode, it's not the most efficient with these 8-speed automatics, because having a step gear, it's best worked with an internal combustion engine. That's how they want to reap the maximum performance out of the torque curve, the torque range, the different power bands. But in a hybrid, if your primary propulsion is from the electric motors, then a dedicated hybrid transmission that works a little bit like a CVT is most effective and most efficient in terms of transferring power. So I've been commuting about almost 150 kilometers now, and you can see that the electric consumption is incredibly high, 31 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers. Although this sounds like a lot, however, this is characteristics or on par for the cost for equivalent cars that uses the same hybrid PHEV system, such as in an X5, CX-90, GLE. And once you've driven the car till the battery is flat, don't worry, you are still able to move and get around town, because the internal combustion engine will work as the primary source of propulsion. However, the driving experience is night and day. So here at low speeds, you feel that the transmission is a little bit sluggish, trying to figure out switching between whether it's going on EV or hybrid mode or just the internal combustion engine. So as a little bit of a delay, you feel it especially when you're stop and go. However, just cruising on like this, just working on the internal combustion engine itself, it's perfectly fine. Although you don't get maximum performance, that means all 500 Newton meters of torque, it's still quite a pleasant car to drive. However, it really is strongly recommended to drive with a full battery or keep the cars charged up and plugged in properly, so you're able to reap the maximum benefits out of this plug-in hybrid system, which is low fuel consumption and a smooth operator when you're going around town. And out on the open road, the all-wheel drive system just exudes a much more firm, pliant character when you're just cruising on the highway, and going into bankings, curves, turns, you just have this added sense of confidence especially when you're carrying lots of speeds throughout. But most importantly is that the powertrain, again, it's a very muted, quiet, serene ride. And something that I applaud Mazda is that in this CX-80, despite not having the very thick and heavy double glazed side windows, it's still a very quiet and refined cabin here. The suspension, especially on highways when you're going at speeds, when the road is flat, it gives you a lot of confidence, and when you come into corners, hitting the apexes, you are very confident. However, when you're managing this sort of rough terrains, especially the expansion joints or sudden change in surface, the ride quality can be a little bit stiff. Or rather, should I say, again, it's little bit out of character, especially for a car that's positioned to be the brand's flagship. I feel that the CX-8 and CX-9 had a much more pliant ride, especially when you're going over these sort of jumps and rough patches. So this is a little bit surprising to me. On this new generation of Mazda's Large Product Group, or rather should I say their rear-wheel drive products, they have this KPC, Kinetic Posture Control, which is an adaptation of the G vectoring control, meaning that again they've adapted this black magic using the engine brake torque vectoring to create a much more level experience for the passengers, especially when you're going into corners, when there's undulations. Passengers at the back would not feel or get thrown around as much compared with a car that does not have KPC. So yeah, again, it shows that Mazda's priority in the CX-80 is for those seated at the back. The Mazda CX-80's visual appeal and interior finishing is really right up there with the European premium mix. However, if you are planning to have the CX-80 as either your family car or a shuffle-driven vehicle, definitely have a home wall box charger installed at home so you can charge up the CX-80 all the time to maximize and get the most out of this 2.5-litre plug-in hybrid system, because this is how the CX-80 was made and intended to be enjoyed. But then, begs the question, if you already have a home wall box charger at home, why not go full EV? So the next time you're out comparing premium SUVs in the 300,000 ringgit price point, make sure you remember all the intricate details of the Mazda CX-80 from my video and see how those cars stacks up against Mazda's flagship. My name is Adrian, thanks for watching cDrive, and make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos like this. Bye bye.